Welcome everyone to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and LFE. We are recording this on February 15th, 2016. We would like to thank everybody who's listening tonight, or today, or this morning, or wherever you are. We would like to send you gratitude and love, and we would like to remind everybody about our Monkey Crew honorary membership. Our second hour is now on a donate tab, so whatever you can donate, whether it be monetary funds or just paying it forward, it's appreciated by all.
And thank you so much to everybody who has donated. You know, we've had a few people that have kicked in, you know, 5, 10. We even have somebody throw in $100.
Nice.
And that was awesome. Especially, I mean,
yeah.
The website just came up, so I just forked out another 400 and something bucks. You know, so that definitely helps when those donations come in to offset the cost of the show, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. So thank you everyone so much. And tonight we have a special guest. I think you all know very well. His name is Tom, and he is the host of the 100th Monkey Radio. Tom is happens to be my uncle, and I've been knowing him for almost 33 years, and I've learned a lot from this man. And so my gratitude and my love goes to Tom. And so tonight's show, we are titling it Tomunism. Yay!
So, you know, I've been kicking this around for a long time, and I'm able to, you know, put out a lot of my ideas and the way Tom sees the things, you know, life, everything that's going on, the spirituality movement, you know, all the different theories that are out there. And you know, I've started on a book so many times it's ridiculous. And you know, I've got a little bit of that down, but it's still got a long ways to go. But I figured it was time for me to, instead of just interjecting a little bit here and there while we're talking to other guests, to actually sit down and try to put out in an understandable way to all of our listeners the way I see things. You know, I mean, I've gone through quite a bit in my life. You know, I've been on this path for, this is 30 years now. 30 years. You know, well, 29 and change right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and I started really intensely. I had some very extreme and intense events happen in my life that took all shadow of doubt out of my mind that there was something grander going on, something outside of the third dimension. I mean, I spent my the first part of my life completely wrapped up in 3D. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean,
the slogan.
You know, and actually kind of in that order. You know?
Yeah.
Because you know, I was all about that. I'm a Scorpio, you know, so I was all about the sex thing, especially when I was younger. It was like that. You know, I followed the wrong head for a long time.
Yeah. Playing the field.
Right.
All positions. Yeah. So you know, one of the things that we've talked about, you know, Tom and I and you know a whole lot of other people, is that we'll have these conversations, you know, before a show starts or after a show ends or at break at work or just on the weekend or whatever, and we have these conversations, and you know, sometimes within 10 minutes of starting a conversation or an hour into a conversation, we realize, hey, we should be recording this. Like, this could be a show. Like, this is really good information that, you know, that we can all benefit from. So this is just kind of, you know, I think this is a great opportunity just to get that conversation out there, you know, in whatever form it decides to come through tonight.
Exactly. Very organic with this.
Yeah. So my first question to start this whole thing off is, Tom, what is your version, definition, interpretation, what is your idea of God?
God, you know, I knew we were going to start off with the big question tonight.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be honest, I could have sat and thought about how I was going to go over this and how I was going to present this to everybody, or bounce it around in my head and let the gears turn and all sorts of stuff. But you know what I did? I knew this question was coming, and I just put it completely off to the side. I didn't think about it at all today.
Yeah.
At all.
That's good.
Because
You know, the first time that me and you reconnected, 5-6 years ago, when I had just started on this path, and Tom's well in the way, we got together. We used to get together every Thursday night and have we called it a soul chat. Well, we ended up calling it a soul chat later on, but we just got together and had a conversation. And our first conversation that I came over to Tom's house for us to have, the first question he asked me was, that same question: what is your idea of God? And up until then, you have the basic religious answer to that question. Oh, well, it's the
white bearded guy sitting up on the cloud.
Yeah,
throwing thunderbolts at us.
Yeah, all these kind of things, But when you're asked that question, and you especially when you're new on this path, and you realize, I don't really know how to answer that question. You
haven't really thought about it deeply.
Yeah. So I thought that was a great question for us to start off with, and I'm glad that you haven't really been pondering that question around, that it's just kind of hit you,
Well, I like to plug in.
Yeah.
I rely so much on that plug-in thing especially when it goes into the deep conversations. I let that come through, and call that what you will. And it can go by 1,000 different names.
Yeah.
But when I get rolling on this stuff, it just flows through. And I got to get to the answer here eventually, right?
Yeah, sometime.
Okay, what is God? What is my interpretation of God? I tend to like the Star Wars version.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. It fits just about every single thing you can apply to God. It's that force. It's a life force. It's an energy. It flows through everything. It surrounds you. You're immersed in it. It's the very fabric of reality, and it's a force that, now, when everybody thinks what is God, they personify it. It's the first, and that's been drilled into us from, that's
2 arms, 2 legs, a head.
Exactly. It looks like us. It's an image of us. We created an image of us as a symbol for us to be able to relate to something that's greater than us. Okay, we see it as greater. We've been taught that it's greater than us.
It's always out of our reach.
And this is understandable for society in their early stages of development to need to do something like that, to try to understand some of the weird shit that was going on. You can't tell me that the caveman, when they were sitting in their cave and they were hungry as shit. Okay, it's snowing outside. They got 2 feet of snow. They're in this cave. They're completely out of food. And they talk to the Great Spirit or the mother saber-toothed tiger or whatever the heck it was, and ask for their blessing. And they walk outside in the blizzard, blowing and snow everywhere, and he stumbles on a rabbit who's broken his leg.
Yeah.
Okay, shit like that happened.
Yeah.
When they would make their plea to that greater force, it would provide. That's why the whole religious thing, or the spiritual first, but then it became personified and deified as the great protector, the giver, the provider of what you needed to survive. So that force and that energy, that force being personified early on, was the way we had to do it to be able to wrap our mind around this thing, because we didn't have any way to express it to each other and explain it to each other. No vocabulary. Our vocabulary had not developed enough to be able to describe these things. Our development hadn't progressed enough to be able to have enough things in the world around us to metaphorize the explanation, because it's all the only way to explain any of this stuff is through metaphor. I mean, it's all metaphor. Everything we see here is a metaphor. I'll stay away from the spiritual being having a physical experience thing right now, but and nothing is real.
Yeah,
but
that's a different avenue.
Right.
But we can get there.
But we needed that to be able to describe it to ourselves and try to just to relate to each other.
So now let's say back in these caveman days, right? Before we started getting, advanced with our vocabulary and advanced with our tool-making skills, which later turns to technology, before we started advancing ourselves, do you think that there was a point that, that force that runs through everything, that creative force that is quote-unquote God, right, that back in that primordial stage that we were just aware of that oneness with it, and so our manifestation just kind of came through because we knew that if we sent out out through everything, that we want that rabbit outside the cave with the broken leg, that if we did that long enough, that we know that we're going to go out there and we're going to find it. Whereas generations.
You're asking if we have the presence of mind to understand that it was a force.
Yes.
Versus some personified deity handing us something.
Yes, and then when those who actually understood it tried to explain it to those who didn't understand it or weren't quite there yet, they had to use some sort of metaphor, or it was just interpreted that way.
Look at our world today. Look at our world today and the way people see what God is. Yeah. So many still see that personification. But now we're finally able, on a larger scale, people being able. This is that vanilla cream soda that I just burped on. So this energy and this force has been personified and deified, I think, primarily throughout history. I think there's always been. Even I think the farther back you go, the rarer it was, where you had somebody who really understood that it was more of a force than a personification of a deity. Because I mean, the religions, the way that Great Spirit rose through the shamanism, the indigenous tribal nature of humanity in our earlier levels of progression. I think that they truly believed in that personification, and understanding who and what we are. That was true.
Yeah,
there was a personification. There was a sentience there, because we, even us here today, there are so many very beautiful beings out there in the different realms or dimensions or whatever you want to call those different places that are non-physical but are just as real, right? Okay, mm-hmm. They're non-physical realms that these energies exist in. These sentient beings exist in. How many of those really big names, the Sanandas, mm-hmm. the Krishnas, the Buddhas, the Jesus, all these different entities up there, the angelic realm, the whole angelic realm. How many of those were actually created by us here first, in an attempt to communicate with what we knew was some personification of a deity, a god. We knew, when you have the faith of a mustard seed and you tell that mountain to throw itself into the lake, that's going to happen. I mean, that's when you have that 100% faith. And these people, you got to understand that their whole lives, especially many eras within our history, their whole lives was all about deity. Everything they did through their whole day was about God, was about their version of God, their vision of God, their great spirit, or whatever form that took. Their whole lives were surrounded by that. That was what they lived for. So the faith, the amount of faith that is created within something like that is tremendous. I mean, the creative force that is being projected there is absolutely amazing. These beings were created. They were actual sentient beings that were the mouthpiece of the force. Okay, now we have people who are in our day today. We have people who are talking to the universal voice, the universal one. They're speaking to universe. They haven't put a name to something like I think it's Esther Hicks, the one who does Abraham, channels Abraham. I listened to one of her really early ones, which somebody asked her exactly who is Abraham. And it came out that the reason that name Abraham was for the purpose of having something to identify with, just something to call it.
Yeah.
That Esther herself would be comfortable with. And it actually described itself as the collective consciousness. I can't remember the exactly. I mean, this is totally verbatim on the way she described it. It has to do with the voice of all of life, all of cosmos, that force, that God essence.
Yes. So what you're seeing is that these, let's take example the angelic realm, right? That these were thought forms created by humans, and with our creative abilities and potential, and our focus on trying to, possibly explain this to somebody else.
With.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole process of trying to explain what this force is created actual beings to inhabit that space that was made for them, basically. That was made to be inhabited.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, think about it. They say the angels were created by God, right?
Right.
We first created God. Right?
Yeah.
We first created God. And so we then from that point now, I mean, I'm talking that's within the Judeo-Christian metaphor system that we're talking right now. So God was created, and then for us to be able to break things down to more specific areas, we needed to have something that, this is too minor for God himself to deal with. So he's got to have somebody working with him, working for him. Okay, and we didn't want to bind up anybody from the physical realm. So our brother died, and now he's an angel. He works for God, and forever.
Yeah, come on. I want him to be free.
What a job! Oh my God. But goes so. We have created beings from that entity, which basically is the exact same thing as we did with God. And so to be able to do healing, or for the harvest, or for corns on my toes, whatever we created those beings in an attempt to specify what their abilities are, what their job is, what their speciality within the spiritual realms are.
Yeah. And the more complex our language got, the more complex our societies and technology got, the more complex we needed these answers to be, and the more minute details that we needed to have covered. And so by default we created more and more and more and more, all from the same force.
You got it.
All from the same being. Yeah. All from the same thing as us. But, first we just needed to be able to explain it in general. And then we needed to break each general part down, and so on and so forth. So, over time, now, 2016, we have hundreds of different deities, if not thousands, all across the world, and all different,
They're being created every day.
Yep, and it just keeps growing.
So, a few years back, I was learning how to use a pendulum.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know what I was speaking with, what was communicating with me through the pendulum. And I got one of these little charts that had the alphabet on it, and I asked for it to spell out his name, and it spelled out his, a name for me, and I was like, oh, well, the name was Posh, P-O-S-H. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that works. I mean, it's not like jumbled letters. You got a vowel in there, you know. It all works as far as our language is concerned. So I was like, okay, Posh. And I said, and so I tried it again to spell it out again. I'm testing this stuff, right? I mean, I test all this stuff. If it doesn't pass my sniff test, that I sniff a lot and I test a lot, then it doesn't make it into Tomunism. So I had it spell its name again, and sure enough, the second time spelled Posh, and I was like, okay, let's spell it again. It spelled Posh 3 times in a row, and I was like, okay, so Posh, what are you? And before without going through the pendulum, I just got this big, I'm the force, the universal voice, is what I got. I mean, it wasn't an entity or somebody who died and was living in the 4th dimension, whatever you want to call it. This was saying that it was the energy, life force. Right there was an opportunity to create another sentient being by the name of Posh.
Yeah.
So we have another God. I mean, what else would you call the figurehead that is speaking with the voice of
the universe?
The universe, with all of creation. This is, I mean, what else do you call that but God in our terminology, in our understanding?
Yeah.
So here we have a God by another name. Now, you know, this whole conversation right now kind of takes me back to the, you know, this is even within the Bible. I think they say there are 99 names of God, right? Is that right? I think it's 99 names of God or something like that. I know there's something like that in the Old Testament, I believe. But I've heard that, you know, there's, you know, the 1,001 names of God. I mean, that single personification of the life force energy is goes by so many names. I mean, Zeus, right?
Yeah.
Father God.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the religions had their prime creator.
Yeah.
The personification of that prime creator. And you know what? I think a lot of those are they're dead. They're gone. I mean, we even see this in our movies. You know, we even see this whole scenario in our movies. Look at Mob and King Arthur stuff. Merlin and his arch enemy Mob, right? Even within Hollywood even spells this out when they talk about. Oh no, hang on. A better metaphor here is. Like the Wrath of the Titans, the one that just came out here a few years ago.
Yeah.
They do a really excellent job of doing this, where the Olympian gods they're talking about, you know, we're no longer going to exist. We won't be immortals anymore because the humans are no longer praying to us.
Yeah.
So when the faith that those entities exist disappears, so do they. And they're personified. They actually are beings. You know, you can't tell me that this, especially that pantheon, the Zeus, Olympus, that whole pantheon of gods was around for a long freaking time. I mean, thousands of years, a couple thousand years. Whatever it was, I mean, it was around for a long time. And you can't tell me that something's going to last that long unless it has people who have direct experience with those entities. They have to have direct experience with those entities for it to exist for any length of time. Christianity, another prime example. How many people have spoken with Jesus? I mean, serious. I mean, I have. I mean, so how I mean, if there's not a direct experiential substance within it, then it's not going to be around very long. So as time went on, Christianity became the dominant religion with it throughout Europe, and then that pantheon started dwindling and falling away. I don't doubt that there's still people that believe in that. I mean, that whole hierarchy. I have no doubt that people still believe in that, and that those entities are still there to a much more diminished sense and a diminished state.
Yeah.
As far as what they can affect worldwide, but yeah, I mean that's.
Yeah, it's our belief and our faith in something that gives it the power to do something. So, going back to the original Star Wars analogy, right, with the Force.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Force that the Jedis use, and we have the Force that the Sith use, right? So now it's a force that runs through everything, and it's the person who wields the Force determines, whether you're using the light side or the dark side of the Force. But in, let's say in that movie, it seems like there was a split. I haven't seen the new Star Wars, but in all the old ones, it seems like there was a rigid line between them both. There's a good side, and then there's the bad side. Where if that force that runs through everything, that can be manipulated by the good side or the bad side, it's the same force. So how do you see the dark side of the force in the overall grand scheme of things?
There's no hard lines. I mean, this goes for everything. There are no hard lines. It's a graduation, a gradual shifting between. So we've got the people that are on the really, really right-hand, positive, what we're terming a positive path. They're focusing on nothing but service, doing good for your brother, completely service, in service to all mankind, everything. And then you have the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where it's all about self. What can I do? Instant gratification. I want it now. Mm-hmm. And that comes along. That's that attitude. When you are selfish, you're also impatient. And you're not going to find very many patient, selfish people. I mean, think about it. Think about the people you see out there who are that you can see as being very self-centered and selfish, and just take a look at them and see compare them to what else you see around as far as patience is concerned. Can they stand in line, or do they start grumbling about something or other while they're standing in line because they're upset about having to stand in line? You'll be surprised at what you see. It's there. So the graduation, the God, there's just so many places there. You have the two far extremes, and 8 billion people spread out between those two extremes right here on the planet. Within the Star Wars, they even talk about, the dark path is, it's easier to get more power rapidly, advance farther, faster, if you're ready to do it by climbing on someone else's back, stepping on somebody else to get there. You don't care about what you do to others to get your fix. Okay, well that's what this world that we're in right now is kind of based on. It's like to be the king of the hill, you've definitely stepped on on a lot of backs and a lot of shoulders to get there. And success here has been said is stuff, money,
Yeah.
more things, possessions. And there's a metaphor within itself. You know, the more possessions you have,
The more possessions you have?
The more possessions you have, exactly. But from that end of the spectrum, I lost where I was going.
So basically, what I'm saying with the light side and the dark side, let's say for conversational purposes, right? So with the light side and the dark side, right? There is no real light side and there is no real dark side. It's all in who's holding the force. Who's manipulating the force.
There's also a lot of between those two extremes. There's a lot of gray area in between.
Well, yeah, because
things that are in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people have said that's evil, that's bad, but it's not doing anything to them.
Yeah.
Okay. It's in the eye of the beholder. If that person who is doing that evil, whatever somebody's termed evil, if it's serving them in a positive way, it may be something that is actually seen as very good.
Yeah.
Oh, I would actually see it as very good. But that gray area, it's a big chunk of this stuff. There's very few absolutes here. Very few absolutes. Yeah. The real core truths are actually very few. You know, there's not very many of them. You can say this is truth.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything's metaphor.
Yeah. Eye of the beholder.
So
back to that.
That mix in the middle is that gray area. It's just that's judgment that has been instilled in us that actually creates that misperception of good and bad. So there are some things that collectively we've agreed are good, and collectively we've agreed are bad. And the collective is a real thing that we really should be paying attention to, at least on the periphery, having some awareness of how the collective thought is moving, how the collective opinion is shifting on morals, on ethics, on what we feel is the right thing in the world. Right now, there's a huge shift going on the planet of people really starting to look at sustainability.
Yeah.
About how we're treating the earth, what we're really taking from the earth. I mean, we take a look at where we were 100 years ago on how we felt about digging coal out of the ground, or pumping oil out of the ground, or doing anything like that, harvesting trees. Yeah, exactly. Any of this stuff, the way we looked at it 100 years ago to the way we look at it now, there's been a huge shift.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's growing fast, and that's probably, that's growing really fast. People are really starting to understand that we have to take care of our planet, or our planet's not going to be able to take care of us.
Yeah.
So we see shifts like that happening now, and there's a whole crap load of other things that you can just look out your door and see are shifting when you look at that collective and its attitudes on what is good and what is bad. Looking at that and understanding that there's that huge gray area within there, you have to step back and pull your judgment out of everything. I mean, even the things that are, I mean, we can look at something and look at it and call it a definitive. You can see, that's black is black, white is white. There's some pretty obvious things that you can say and you can do. I mean, even when it comes to what people are doing to other things, if some kids sitting on the corner strangling a cat, you can say that's bad. right? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, there's another situation. If that cat is rabid and just got done, scratching the shit out of him, and it needs to be put down, there may be another way to look at that too. But so we really got to be careful about the way we judge, and it's especially when it comes to deeper things. When it comes to the more things like the spirituality aspects of the thing, the way people see God. You really have to pull your judgment away, because what's true today may not have been what's true yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Olympians, okay, the Zeus, that Pantheon. Look at that from yesterday, and look at the Judeo-Christian, the Buddhism, the Hinduism, that we have today. That's very active and is thriving. So that's our truth today as a collective. We've adopted those, and those other things have gone by the wayside. Now, when we start putting that judgment out towards others about the way they see things, the way they believe, we're judging ourselves. Ultimately, we are judging ourselves.
When you judge somebody for being so rigid in their ways, well, maybe you should step back and see how rigid you actually are in your ways, and how closed off to certain things that because you've already prejudged them. And what
now,
about judging?
Here's a point I was trying to make a minute ago, but it kind of didn't come out real well. Now, when you're judging somebody about being rigid in your ways, is a good way to express this. Now, when you look at somebody and you say, wow, and you can tell that person is really rigid in their ways. There's two ways to do that, to say that same thing. There's one way to say it in judgment, and there's one way that you're saying it from observation. You're looking at the evidence in front of you, and it would be something that would be agreeable within the collective, as that person is extremely rigid in their thought forms. That's something that can be put out as a truth. That is a true thing. I've seen people who were very rigid in their thought forms. There was no bending them, even when when you hit them in the face with a truth, and they cannot accept it for whatever reason. There's no way that they're going to budge off of the truth that they know and they believe in. There's no way you can shake it from them, no matter what the evidence in front of them is.
Yeah. Well, it's almost so we have what was I just gonna say? Damn it. Okay. Judgment. Okay. Now, being rigid in their ways, right? Yes, that is an observation, but what makes it a judgment, I think, would be having some sort of emotional connection to it. Because an observation, you can observe something and not be attached to it at all. But when you make that same observation and have that emotional connection to it, that's when you get into the judgment realms.
In that statement, that person is rigid about their thought forms. There can definitely be a emotional charge with that. I mean, in majority of the time, somebody would say that, and this is from just my experience, what I've seen out there. The majority of the time, somebody would ever say that. I'd say 99.99% of the time I've heard people say something similar to that along those same lines. There's always been an emotional charge with it.
Yeah.
A negative emotional charge with it.
Yeah. So one more thing on judgment. We talk about this, and we get into this category of negatives, right? We're judging things, not to be judgmental of things and have that negative emotion geared towards it, right? But do you think that still holds true in judging positive things, like, oh, that that girl is so beautiful, right? Now, it's an observation, but you see a good-looking woman walking down the street, and you're like, oh, that girl's beautiful, You know, you have that little bit of that emotional charge that comes along with it. Now, is that something that you know, you think that we should just kind of bypass with that, you know, make an observation but don't have that emotional connection to it?
Here's the crux of life right here. Okay, this is what it's all about. Okay, when you put something out that is positive, has a good emotional charge to it, that woman is beautiful. Oh, I love her. She's just gorgeous. She just like excites me in so many ways. You're drawing more of that towards you. You're creating that in your world. Now, if you go, wow, that guy's fucking rigid in his ways, man. He just will not budge. You're putting out some negative shit, and you're drawing more of that into your own personal life.
There it is.
Boom!
There it is.
There it is. There it is, right there. That's what this is all. That's what we're all struggling with. Now, I say that we're struggling with because just look out there. Even within the conscious community, there are so many people now, and more every day, who are jumping onto the path, jumping onto the bandwagon, if you will, of consciousness and spirituality and even religion. Okay, all these new ideas that are starting to pop up in people's minds. They're working on themselves. They're working on being positive. And this whole idea is one of the foundational things in majority of all of the different theories that are out there, all the different forms of practice that are out there. It's you create your own reality. What you put out comes back to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's so... I mean, the basis of this stuff and the foundational truths of this stuff, this is one of those truths, by the way. They're so simple, but we have a tendency to complicate everything that we try to explain. Because how can it be that simple? How can just that one sentence be the truth that encompasses so much? What you put out comes back to you. If I'm calling that beautiful woman gorgeous and I'm getting a fuzzy feeling in my belly and I feel good about it and I'm just projecting that out there, I'll tell you what, you're going to have some good stuff coming your way. If I'm sitting there constantly, everybody I see, they don't do that. They should do that. They look like that. They don't blah. They look blah 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 blah. That's just nothing but negativity you're projecting out into the world. And guess what? It's going to come back. Now, as on this conscious path, you know, people are trying to put this stuff into practice. You know, they're trying to work on themselves, trying to apply this creative power that they have. One of the biggest problems I see out there is that people do it when they're consciously thinking about it only. Mm-hmm. You know, when they're in their meditation or their prayer for the morning or their prayer in the evening, whenever their prayer, whenever that happens to be. The times during the day when they catch themselves and they decide to consciously be aware of what they're doing. But the rest of the time, people just let all of this conscious awareness slip completely back onto the back burner. It's something I'm working on, but I do that in my meditation or in my yoga class
on the set time.
or on my soul chat every Thursday. But every other day of the week, they just, you know, they get up in the morning, go to work, you know, BS with all the friends, go out, have drinks, blah, blah, blah. You know, they live their life. They do the social thing. And this is the last thing on their mind. So they're on autopilot, and they are running the program. Their program, the program that they have. what they've been taught through their lifetimes, how they were taught to respond to these things, how they were taught to react, and that's what they do the rest of the time. Well, they have this little tiny sliver of time that they focus on making things right for themselves, bringing good things into their lives for themselves, learning, growing, understanding more. There's just this little sliver of their life that's really applied to that. The next big step for humanity, for all of us, is for us to start living it, for us to have a conscious awareness 24/7.
Oh yeah.
To understand we're creators 100% of the time. That we're not creators just that 1% of the time when we're trying to create. We create when we don't. We always create, and that's the thing. We're always in a creative mode. Creation. We are creators. So. It's oh God, there's so much fear that gets involved in this, right? Especially in the outset for most people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh God, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I putting this out negatively? Did I say that wrong? Did I?
Yeah, always second guessing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're our own worst critic. I mean, absolutely our own worst critic. It's such a gradual process, and if there's one thing that I can say to people about the growth into that awareness, that 24/7 awareness, is don't worry about it. Just try to do it. Just work on it. Just do it. Try do your best. And don't worry about what you did. Because, those things that come back to you, it gets to a point where it's pretty instant. Sometimes it's just like, absolutely instant. Yeah. It's like you stub your. It's like you say something and you stub your toe.
Yeah.
Should
have said that.
But those are I see those are absolute gifts. Those are amazing synchronistic gifts from universe that are giving me the hey, pay attention.
Yeah.
And this stuff comes as you progress. This kind of thing comes. I mean, the rapidness, the quickness, the way it responds, really is reflective of where your baseline of consciousness is, your baseline of awareness. Have you gotten it to where you're staying aware 30% of the day? Well, it's going to be responding 30% faster than when it was when you were doing 1% of the way.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's one of those things.
This is what I've noted, and it's not a quantitative thing. It's something you really can't. There's no real measurement that I know of. There may be that I have never discovered, or maybe that's for somebody else to figure out. Some scientist or something will need to break this down for their own personal use. But as you grow and as your level, your baseline of consciousness continues to grow, it seems like that things just come back faster. It's just amazing.
The more you put in, the more you get out.
You have the faith of the mustard seed.
Yeah.
When I talk about conscious baseline, that's kind of where was I going with that? Hang on. I was just about to go the wrong way with that one. God, it's reflective. All of life is just so reflective to where we are. You get once your conscious baseline gets to a certain point, it gets so much easier to catch yourself, to have your flags, your little dingers, the ones that set off the little dinger in your mind and go ding ding ding. You just did something wrong. And I think this has a lot to do with as you grow and your baseline is growing, other things start coming online for you too. Your energy reception, how you're able to perceive energies around you from the way, what kind of energies other people are putting out. Your own personal energy. What's it feel like when I'm speaking? What's it feel like when I'm thinking? What's it feel like as I'm moving this widget around on the table? All of these things, is a energy that goes along with all of this stuff. And as your conscious baseline raises and it continues to grow, all these different things start coming online for you. I mean, the precognition, there's a ton of different areas that this stuff grows in. And it depends on the person on which one that they're going to notice first, that they're going to maybe have a more of an aptitude towards in this lifetime, and it's primarily based on their programming, their experience.
So do you see it easier nowadays for people to reach that level to where they're developing these abilities based on the time they've put in? They're developing this precognition, for example, right? Do you think it's easier for us to reach that level now than it was a couple hundred years ago or 1,000 years ago?
Oh God, yes.
Now, do you think that's because of the internet and the spread of information, or do you think it's just because of the timing?
Both. I think the internet, all of it's coming together at a certain point. This point in our history right now is a very special time, extremely special time. Great. We've been able to break down the borders between our religions and have access to the guy that's on the other side of the border and their thoughts and their ideas and their beliefs. We've been able to compare apples and oranges. We've been able to look at all the different world religions and communicate with them, ask our questions between, and find find the commonality and see that all of us have there's some serious threads that run through all of them, that tie them all together, that tie all of humanity together. We can see that now instantaneously from around the world, from the other side of the planet. The internet that was sent, when it came online, the dam burst as far as conscious development on the planet. I mean, there were some things that happened, in the last 50 years. Been some pretty amazing events that have happened that have been precursors to the internet. They came at their right time. What they call it, the conscious convergence of all sorts of things. You go all the way back to the turn of the century, between the 18th and 19th century. It was, or the 19th and 20th century. The late 1800s. Blavatsky and the conscious revolution that happened then was tremendous over coming out of the Dark Ages. I mean, we've been, at least Western societies, religions had been so polluted and constrained into such a tiny box for the way people were allowed to think. We couldn't explore. People didn't know how to read. I mean, if you knew how to read, you ended up at the castle. Yeah. I mean, it was just education wasn't out there. Since the industrial age began a couple hundred years ago, humanity has grown leaps and bounds as far as their consciousness and their obviously our technology. But our consciousness and technology are going hand in hand, because we're creating, check this out. The technology is creating a metaphor to better explain spirituality. I mean, you think about it, before the industrial age came along, what did we have out there in our life experience? We have a plow that hooks up behind the cow. We got a wagon with the buckboard wagon or just whatever, and the things that we had that we used in our lives daily were not very complex.
Just like our consciousness.
Just like our consciousness. Okay, as we developed more complex machinery and we started, using motors to power things, steam, and then we got into the coal, and then we got into the oil, and as all of the Industrial Revolution progressed, our consciousness was going hand in hand with it. Now here we are, we have computers that just freaking amazing what they've done with computers just in my lifetime. I mean, when I was born, a computer that had as much power as this cheap cell phone. Now, I don't have one of those smartphones, okay? I have a dumb phone. I have a little flip phone, and all it does is make phone calls, all right? But it's got a camera on it, so, and, a couple of gigs of memory, and, the computing power in this little phone in my hand, when I was born, it would have taken an office building full of computers to have the same computing power. I mean, that's just in my lifetime. So, and look at where our consciousness has gone. Our ability to explain consciousness. It's just an amazing freaking time to be here. And the ability to explain this in a way that people can understand, be able to paint a picture with a metaphor on a concept that is pretty hard to wrap your head around, truly wrap your head around. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Look at I love Tom Campbell. Tom Campbell, my big toe. I mean, I love the metaphors that he uses. He uses the World of Warcraft metaphor as far as the way we are existing here on planet Earth. We are just avatars on a big computer game, and our true self is sitting up there somewhere with a keyboard in front of them or a joystick in front of them, and they're playing this avatar down here. Yeah. The metaphor is awesome. I mean, if somebody walks away from the keyboard, that must mean that the player goes to sleep. So the avatar goes to sleep, and as your true self is off doing something else in the other realm, right? Yeah. It's just the metaphors that we have access to today to explain these things are just absolutely amazing because of our technology.
It goes hand in hand.
It goes hand in hand
with our understanding or understanding or overstanding. Exactly. with our advancement in our language, we've gotten there. And I think, like you said, I think we're to a point to where, we can explain these concepts many different ways to many different people, regardless really of their background or their education.
We're able to explain it in indisputable ways. Mm-hmm. Well, let's say practically indisputable ways. I mean, because somebody can argue about anything. Yeah. You can tell somebody water is wet, and they will argue till they die. And they'll pull on one or two little truths about oxygen's in water, So and oxygen's not wet. So they'll stand on that as their foundation. And this is a metaphor I'm giving right here again too. But oxygen is made up of more than just, or water is made up of more than just oxygen. And some people will focus in on one little tidbit item that they will base their whole resistance to thinking about something new. My mom told me the devil was the devil comes through tarot cards. They're of Satan.
Yeah.
So she absolutely would never listen to anything that came through those. And that's the kind of thing I'm pointing to here, alluding to, anyways. So,
yeah. Well, we've covered the first hour.
And there's a couple things I want to go into in the next hour. I kind of like to talk about the way we progress and how it's okay.
Yeah.
Backsliding. It's okay.
Yeah. Up
anyway,
and down.
we do that. We all do that.
Yeah.
I'm the champion of it. So it's good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll talk to you guys after we take a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for listening, and remember, we do have the second hour is all free now for everyone, and we're seeing how we do with running the show with donations only or honorary monkey crew whatever. Yeah. Anyways, we love you guys, and we'll talk to you in the next hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
Namaste, my friends.